Some things are better left unknown. And I'll never find you here, 'cause no one's ever home. Oh, what a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. Oh, what a sinner. Is it in her? What's the truth in this riddle? Is love really just this simple? I can't seem to find my way in this world that never stays. What a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. What a sinner, is it in her? Is this real? Just illusion? I'm lost in wonderland of confusion. I'm lost in wonderland of confusion. Is this real or just illusion? Manifestation or a dark delusion? Is this real or just illusion? I'm lost in a wonderland of confusion.
Rip'n Rabbit Hole is a community-driven radio. At times the community comments may reveal prejudices and other beliefs that we or our sponsors do not condone. Views or opinions expressed by the community, callers, or guests, are those of the individual speaking and do not represent the views or opinions of this site. Rip'n Common Sense content is intended for mature audiences only. Enjoy.
Multiverse broadcasting system initiated.
Hello.
Lasers.
Multiverse connection established.
Lasers.
Hello.
Multiverse connection secure.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
This is My Life DIY, and
hi, this is JoJo.
Hi, my name is Ash.
Hey everybody, it's AJ the Rip'n Rabbit.
This is Cynthia Sue Larson.
This is your man Meta, aka Propagate This Light.
And you're now listening
to DarkWolf's Den.
The DarkWolf's Den Show on Rip'n Common Sense Radio.
Are ghosts real?
We had 1,000 hours of continuous communication with the spirit world.
Does time travel actually exist?
The laws of physics seem to be compatible with time machines.
You know, sometimes I wonder about reincarnation. Don't you?
A 4-year-old boy in Adelaide, Australia, has told his parents that he used to be Britain's Princess Diana.
What would happen if the world found out that aliens were real?
I didn't say disclosure would be easy, but what is the alternative?
To establish a space force as the 6th branch of the armed forces.
We have so many questions and yet so little time, so to have you here, the pleasure is all mine.
Coming to you from a secret mountain cave hidden deep within the Idaho wilderness. This is the DarkWolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and we are broadcasting live across the multiverse from a secret cave, hidden high up in the beautifully snow-covered peaks of the Idaho mountains. That's right. We're ripping through the electromagnetic soup, tearing through the atmosphere, and tunneling away into your radio like a quantum particle. This is the DarkWolf's Den Show for Thursday, June 24th, 2021. So whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be discussing animal-human hybrids. There's been a lot of stories of cryptids that seem to be like frogmen and dogmen and many, many others, and we're going to cover some of those tonight. Thursday, June 24th, 2021, on the DarkWolf's Den Radio Show. But first, today in history. On this day in 1901, the first exhibition by Pablo Picasso opens in Paris. Pablo Picasso himself was only aged 19 years old at the time. And that is today's Today in History. I did not know that he was only 19 years old when he put his first exhibition up. Did you guys know that? That is pretty cool. That means, you know, a true artist. He must have been practicing for years, right? To have a full exhibition by 19, that is too awesome. And before we get into tonight's topic of animal-human hybrids, we've got one more thing to do.
Say what?
Today's quote comes from an anonymous source. It says, "Today I saw a woman talking to her cat. She really thought the cat understood. When I got home, I told my dog, and we both had a good laugh." Again, that is by an anonymous source, and that is today's segment of
Say What?
That cracks me up every time, that Stewie sound. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed that quote today. Ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about human-animal hybrids tonight, and it is amazing to me, studying cryptids, how many of them that there are. Last night, we talked about Arizona, and there's actually a story from last night's episode that I was not able to get to, so we're going to start out with that tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Apparently, Arizona, we know, has a lot of weird cryptids, but one cryptid that they have is called the Goat Man. That's right, half man, half goat. Kind of like a demon, doesn't it? That's what it sounds like to me, like a pan creature, right? Well, we're just going to have to listen to the case file. Ladies and gentlemen, the Goat Man of Arizona.
The Goat Man. Around the areas of Parker and Tempe, there have been sightings of a half-man, half-goat. Although it should be noted in some cases the head of the creature is still that of a goat. According to the stories, this creature can be both bad and good depending on the encounter, but all states that you should never run from one of them.
I find the fact that it can be either bad or good very intriguing. That shows more of a human-like quality, right? Not just a bad creature or just a good creature, one that has an emotional value to it.
In one report, 2 boys encountered this cryptid, and once they realized what it was, they quickly got away, and nothing bad happened to them. Yet, in another instance, a group of teenagers were sitting near a fire when they suddenly were visited by a 7-foot-tall goat man who managed to grab one of the kids.
7-foot-tall goat man. Are you sure it wasn't Krampus grabbing kids? That really sounds like Krampus. What do you think, Sandy B? You out there in the chat? You think it might have been a Krampus, Sandy? For those listening on the radio, Sandy B is one of the people over here in our YouTube chat room. If you'd like to join us on YouTube, we are on the Rippin' Rabbit Hole. We're live over here on the YouTube, and we will be back up on the Darkwolf's Den Show on YouTube also.
With this story, the kid that was grabbed was never seen again, and it is assumed, due to hearing him screaming, that the creature killed him.
I don't know how valid that assumption would be. I mean, just because the kid's screaming and was never heard from again, he could have just been kidnapped and taken back and raised by the goat man. I mean, that's not completely insane, right?
There isn't much to go on with this, but I did want to mention it. At the same time, I am curious if it wasn't actually a skinwalker. I do find it interesting how many cryptids in Arizona have the ability to change forms.
And you know, that's something I didn't think about. Maybe some of them are skinwalkers and shapeshifters, right? Maybe they just change form and they're all the same creature. We do know of another creature also found in Arizona, among other places, that is well known for changing their shape or having chameleon-like tendencies, right?
Probably the most famous would be what is simply called reptoids or reptilians. I am hesitant with this one since many, including myself, view this creature more in lines with aliens than cryptids.
And while I personally do agree, I view reptilians as more of an alien myself, just the same, reptilians are a lizard man, right?
Most stories involving these beings are said to come from the aptly named Superstition Mountains near Phoenix. Conspiracy theorists have long held this area as being home to an underground military base, which is said to house these beings.
Dulce Base is one of the many bases that are accused of housing beings underground, such as reptilians.
In reading over many of the accounts, the reptoids are responsible for people passing out, only to wake up hours later with no recollection of what happened to them. Yet in other stories, these beings are said to kidnap people who unwarily enter the area. In one strange story, 3 bike riders in the Sonoran Desert stopped to take a break from their ride. At that moment, they noticed a 6-foot-tall lizard-like creature walking across the path.
That's another interesting thing I find about this story. The creature was only 6 foot tall, not 8, 10, 12 foot, whatever. 6 foot tall reptilian, a standard size creature.
They said it had black eyes with a gold-colored stripe in the center.
Like a lizard's eye.
Its skin was scaly and green with red patches.
As you guys know, I love those small details. The skin was green and scaly with red patches. Now, there's something you don't often hear. It wasn't just a green, scaly dude. You know, it was very specific on the explanation of this thing's skin. Interesting. Just really interesting.
And it didn't have a nose, but it did have 2 slits for nostrils. Once it noticed the men, it stood there for a while, and finally it raised one hand that had long claws on it, and it began to chatter its teeth and hiss. Luckily, it didn't attack, but rather ran away into the desert. The men believed it was actually observing them the whole time, even after it vanished from sight.
And if that isn't the classic description of a reptilian, I don't know what is. Now, it's interesting that the thing ran from them, but the hissing, the reaction, like I've seen this in multiple case files. Mind you, not every case file, but when it comes to reptilians, that's actually classic demeanor for them, believe it or not. But the reptilians aren't only in Arizona, as we know, and the reptilians aren't the only reptile-type creature either. There's another really famous case known as the Loveland Frogman.
Amphibious anomalies have shocked and terrified both businessmen, farmers, and police officers, and remain one of the most intriguing cryptozoological mysteries in the United States. One of the most intriguing cases encountered is that of the Loveland Frogman, or Loveland Lizards. The story of these unique creatures began in May of 1955.
And this comes to us from the Unexplained Mysteries YouTube channel, and I find this interesting that the case goes back to the 1950s, because it's right around that time that we have a slew of lizard and reptilian creature reports across the country.
On a lonely stretch of road that runs along the Miami River in Claremont County, just on the outskirts of a small town known as Loveland. At approximately 3:30 a.m., an unnamed businessman claimed to have witnessed 3 bipedal reptilian entities gathering on the side of the road. The man pulled his car to the side of the curb and observed these creatures for what he estimated to be around 3 minutes. During this time, he noticed that these strange beings stood between 3 to 4 feet tall, were covered with leathery skin and had webbed hands and feet.
A little bit different from our previous reptilian report, more like a frog than a lizard, right?
However, their most distinguishing characteristic was their distinctly frog-like head, which the man claimed bore deep wrinkles where the hair should have been.
Well, I guess that answers our question. It definitely sounds like a frog then. But the story only gets stranger from here.
Just as the man was about to leave, one of the creatures suddenly held what the witness could only describe as a wand. The eyewitness could then see the strange creature holding the wand above its head. Thus begins the bizarre legend of the Loveland Frogman. This tale would be fascinating enough if it ended there, but the two most significant encounters in this case were yet to come.
So I don't know what happened after the frog held the wand over its head. I don't know if it started looking like a human or if it disappeared into another dimension. I don't know. But the stories that follow only continue to get more and more strange with this creature.
At about 1 AM on March the 3rd, 1972, nearly 17 years after the first report, a police officer was travelling along a roadside heading towards Loveland when he saw something that would change his life forever. The officer claimed that he was driving slowly when he saw what looked like a dog on the curb. Suddenly, the animal darted in front of the car, forcing the officer to slam on the brakes, in order to avoid a potential collision with the creature. Once the police cruiser came to a halt, its headlights fell upon the animal. At this point, the officer described something that seems literally too bizarre to be true. In the span of seconds, this crouched, frog-like creature stood on its 2 legs, stared back at the policeman, then scrambled over the guardrail, and scurried down the embankment, finally disappearing into the river. The officer in question described the creature as being 3 to 4 feet tall and weighing in the area of 50 to 75 pounds. He also claimed that its skin had a leathery texture and that the animal's features resembled those of a frog or lizard.
You know, you can dismiss some of these cases, but when you have a case like this, where the creature almost exactly, minus the height, but almost exactly matches the creature from the 1950s, I don't know, it's just, and these are police officers reporting this. This isn't just, average Joe looking for a book deal or whatever. This is a police officer who's run upon this creature who is now a frog that's hopped off into the river. Like, I'd be kind of tripped out. But what I find intriguing is you have these similarities over both of these case files, even though it was almost 20-year differential between them.
Another officer investigated the scene later that evening. He saw no sign of the creature, but reported there were distinct scratch marks on the guardrail where the animal purportedly crossed.
So there was at least some circumstantial evidence to suggest that the story was true.
The second sighting occurred 2 weeks later while police officer Mark Matthews had an encounter of his own. According to the report, Officer Matthews, while driving into Loveland, spotted what he believed to be an injured animal lying on the pavement. Matthews climbed out of his car with the intention of removing the carcass from the already ice-slicked road, when the creature suddenly lurched upwards into a crouched position. Taken back by the reptilian creature, Matthews took a shot at the creature, which then proceeded to hobble over the side of the road and step over a guardrail, all while keeping a watchful eye on the trigger-happy officer. Matthews' frogman matched the first officer's description down to the last detail, with the exception of a tail which was absent in earlier reports.
And of course, this is the point where the skeptic goes, aha, another detail that wasn't there, it must be a lie. Well, not actually. Just because one person picks up a detail that the rest missed doesn't necessarily mean it's even a different creature. In a moment of, oh my god, you tend not to pick up every single small detail, though a tail, I admit, is something that is kind of, able to be picked up on. But maybe it's a different aged creature. Maybe it's literally a different creature altogether. Same species, same group, but different individual. We also know, like, tadpoles. If it is frog people, tadpoles or the younger ones have a tail before they grow out of it. So maybe it was a teenage mutant frog, right? Teenage mutant ninja frog.
In the years which have followed these events, Officer Matthews has changed his story. He now claims the animal in question was nothing more than a large reptile which escaped from its owner. Some have said that Matthews' change of heart was because of ridicule by superiors. It's hard to believe that this creature ever existed, but one has to question what other animal you would confuse this with. Do you think the Loveland Frogman exists, or once existed?
And there was a 20-year span between these creatures being seen. So it's not like they just, didn't hunt or didn't appear for 20 years, unless maybe it was. Because we do know that certain animals can slow their blood down in certain situations and literally hibernate. If I'm not mistaken, frogs may have this ability. At least some frogs have this ability, I do know. So perhaps these creatures only come out every 20 years or so to feed or to do whatever they do, right? Perhaps they only come out for a little while every 17 years. I say 20 years, I rounded, but it was 17 years between sightings. So maybe they have like cicadas. Cicadas have, 17, 18 years between times they come out of the ground? Perhaps that's exactly the case with these frogmen. Perhaps it has a number of years before they actually come back to reality, or perhaps it's the wand. The wand is what intrigues me. Maybe they're interdimensional travelers. Maybe only every 17 years can they come across our dimension. I don't know. I'm speculating. This is all speculation, but it's very, very intriguing. And what's really intriguing is the fact that we have these across the country, from reptilians in Arizona to frogmen in Ohio. And there's been many reports across the entire country. We're going to get into a crazy one in the second half called the Jersey Devil, if you've never heard of it. That's a human hybrid creature that is very, very crazy story. But speaking of human hybrids, before we get into that, what is the possibilities of it being real? I know usually I'll wait till the second half, but I can't wait. What is the likelihood that these creatures are real? Now, from the 1950s and 70s, I can agree possibly the technology wasn't there. However, today's technology is actually in question of the ability to do just this, to create human-animal hybrids in a lab. And, maybe that's what's been done from the beginning. Maybe a lot of these cryptids and these human-animal hybrids are where these experiments have been done by this group that is many, many years ahead of the mainstream group, of course. Perhaps these experiments have escaped the lab and have found a way to reprocreate. Perhaps they are literally half human, half other creatures. And if that sounds a little crazy to you, well, check this out.
This is it. Human stem cells being injected into a pig's embryo.
And this report comes to us from CBC News.
For the first time, scientists are seeing how our cells grow and interact inside an animal. This pig, the first known chimera.
Yeah, you heard that correct. Like the chimeras from the ancient Greek and Roman times. And, there were a lot of those, like the satyrs, and there were a lot of creatures, the minotaurs, the centaur. They gave us the mermaid. They gave us a whole lot of these animal-human crossover creatures. It's almost as if they were describing what they were seeing, possibly.
The ultimate goal for this type of research is to whether we can use this technology to generate human tissue and organs. That's going to give us a lot of unique insights.
Right now, scientists are nowhere near that goal.
Let me rephrase what she said. Officially, the mainstream narrative is that scientists are nowhere near that goal, but we know the deep underground projects are way past that, undoubtedly.
But recent studies have shown how that process can work using gene editing. Scientists would delete a specific piece of an animal's DNA, so its embryo wouldn't be able to grow a heart, for example. Then they'd inject that embryo with human stem cells, which move into the void and grow a human heart. The embryo would then be put back inside the animal to develop.
So this report comes to us from 4 years ago. However, I have a report now for you guys from 2 months ago.
Serious ethical issues are being raised after it emerged that US and Chinese scientists have implanted human cells into monkey embryos.
Do you want Planet of the Apes? Because this is how you get Planet of the Apes. Right here. This is what you do. You put human stuff into monkeys, or monkey stuff into humans, and you make monkeys that are smarter than regular monkeys, and monkeys that take over the world. This is how you end up with Planet of the Apes, right here.
The aim of the research is to understand more about how cells develop and to help research in cultivating organs for transplant.
This is one of the most slippery slopes I've ever seen. And here's what they're going to do, guys. This is how they're going to introduce transhumanism. This is how they're going to introduce a lot of the technology into humanity. And it's going to be through biotech. It's going to be a way to, quote, help the paralyzed, help the needy, help those with medical injury. And it's going to slowly weasel its way in until it's made itself into mainstream. And then they're going to do whatever they want. So, guys, every time they talk about, well, this is going to be a great advancement for stem cells, it's going to be an advancement for humankind, be scared. Be very, very scared, because what their idea of advancement is and what your idea of a good advancement is a whole lot different. That I assure you. But now that we've heard what they did with the pig and how they grew the human stem cells in the pig, let's see what they did with the monkey.
The scientists injected human stem cells, cells that have the ability to develop into many different body tissues, into macaque embryos. The developing embryos were studied for up to 20 days. Other so-called mixed species embryos, or chimeras, have been produced in the past, with human cells implanted into sheep and pig embryos. This scientific group was led by Professor Juan Belmonte of the Salk Institute in the US. He says the work could address the shortage in transplantable organs and help us understand more about early human development, the way disease progresses, and aging.
Again, that's a very, very slippery slope to go down. How would you like to be 20 years younger? Well, we can grow you a heart that's 20 years younger inside of a pig, though. I don't know. It bothers me. It bothers me the slope that this could go down, because you could literally start making human pigs, human rabbits, human raccoons, human wolves. I thought I was the only one of my kind, dadgummit. I want to be the only one of my kind. But seriously, this is a very dangerous path to go down. This is something that especially ethically, is it right? Because they can get away with it and say, well, it's for the needy. We'll be able to grow new transplant stuff and be able to help more and more people. And that sounds great. And I'm all about helping people. Please don't get me wrong, guys. I don't want to sound callous. I don't want to sound like I don't care about people. I love people. I just want to be very, very clear in asking, what is the ethical repercussions of this? Is it something that we should be doing at all? Should we be mixing human and animals? Could this lead to stuff down the road that could be very, very dangerous? Could it backfire? Could these transplanted things take on features that they aren't supposed to? Extra cancers, diseases introduced into the human society that would have never been there had we not mixed ourselves with animals like sheep and cattle and dog and pig and whatever else there is. Like, is it right? Is it right to mix animal and human? Or is it something that we're literally